What's going on, guys? It's Bromley. We're at Empire Barbell, and today we're going to go over some tips for you novice strength athletes out there. So rule number one, and that is to follow the KISS method. No, this is not. This is keep it simple, stupid. I already alluded to a bigger problem with novices is that they try to jump into more advanced, more specific methodologies sooner rather than later. Guys that train a specific way at their most fully realized state did not train that way when they just started. So you want to stay away from methods that are convoluted, that are overly complex. It's one of the reasons I do not like West Side, especially for you new guys out there. You want to stay away from things that are hard to manage, where there's a high risk of error, right? Okay, you want something that follows very broad principles that is going to be predictable and reproducible over time, and that's always with the simplest types of methods. This is one of the reasons linear progressions work so well. Something like starting strength or the Grayskull LP or any one of the other linear progressions out there that are very simple, very methodical, and give you a lot of practice with the same lifts over time. That's going to be your best bet. Stay away from strength specific stuff, especially the complex stuff. Number two, compound movements. Okay, compound movements are the bread and butter, not just because those are the movements that you're going to be tested in when you actually decide to compete, if you ever do, but they're also the developmental movements. They're the things that grow you in the first place. Powerlifting started in the 60s. The IFBB was founded in the 40s. Through the 40s and 50s, all of the movements people did in the gym were largely driven by physique culture. That had a much greater prevalence in pop culture than strength stuff did, because at the time, the only real competitive strength sport that existed was Olympic weightlifting. So when they finally got around to making powerlifting, they took movements that were historically developmental movements. So by doing these movements and prioritizing those over a host of machine and cable work, not only will you grow muscle, but you'll do so in the context of learning technique, getting comfortable under the bar, building up your sense of how the bar moves. The more touches you get on the bar earlier on, the better. Now, trainees do need a broad amount of practice over different movements. So I do recommend using movement variations as accessory work, but the main movement should always be a staple. Your training should always revolve around a very simple, very developmentally oriented iteration of squatting, pressing, deadlifting, and rowing. Number three, you need more reps, you need less maxing. Now there's a reason for this. Maxing falls into the category of strength-specific work, right? We already discussed this. You novices don't need to improve your nervous efficiency. The instinct of every novice is to go into the gym and lift as heavy as they can, as often as they can. And while that's not completely without value, it's not sustainable. In fact, as you get more advanced and you have to start paying attention to things like periodization, you have to realize that the most important blocks of your training are going to be the developmental ones that don't have anything to do with lifting as heavy as you can. It's not only going to keep you injury-free, but it's going to make sure that you grow more consistently and evenly over time. And it's going to make sure that you actually have the opportunity to build a technique foundation. Nobody has ever perfected their technique under maximal loads. That doesn't happen. You have to have weight that is heavy enough to keep you honest, but also light enough that you can maneuver and make adjustments as you need to. When you're a novice, you need to emphasize reps to get more bang for your buck. Okay, the more often that you lift heavy, the more likely you are to trip, the more likely you are to overtrain, to overreach, to cause injury, or to develop very, very bad habits that come as a byproduct of not spending time with lighter weights. I did that for a few years in my teens, and you know what I found out? I didn't grow any muscle. I didn't look like I lifted. Do you know how embarrassing it is to be at a bar and somebody you know from the gym comes up with his buddy and says, "Do you believe this guy benches 400 pounds? And the guy looks you dead in the face and says, "No way." All right? Getting big was not my primary goal, but for all the work you put into like getting a significant amount of strength, it'd be nice to get a little recognition for it. So I learned at that point that I wasn't growing enough. My bench technique, my upper body techniques were, yes, they were advantaging me towards more poundages in the short term, but I wasn't doing anything to raise my ceiling in the long term. So the developmental approach is huge. So one of the reasons a lot of the best benchers of all times weren't technique whores. They were bros that liked bench pressing and they built a shit ton of mass. Number five, you guys need to not go crazy with competitions. A lot of you guys get bit by the lifting bug, by the competition bug, and you just want to do a meet every freaking weekend. Now, it's great that you have that exuberance towards competing, but it doesn't do anything for you in the short term if you end up just bookending all of these meets every 2 months. The peak is accruing all this fatigue in your training, taking the fatigue away and letting yourself get this temporary point of ultimate realization of strength. Means if you're doing contest prep after contest prep, you're going to be interrupting the periods of base building that should be dominating what you're doing right now, because you want to go get another novice trophy. Okay, nobody cares about your novice trophies. So number 6, learn. You want to learn as much. The best coaches do, the best athletes do, but be skeptical. You're going to talk to a lot of different people that have a lot of different preferences and a lot of different peculiarities about what they emphasize and the way they train. Some things work specifically for them. Some things they have gotten good in spite of doing. There's a lot of people that do dumb shit, but they get good in spite of it. You're not going to find any one person that sells you the magic bean for getting good over a period of time. Sound principles, you're going to be okay, and you just have to massage these principles to kind of fit your schedule, fit your physiology, and that takes time. So no matter what you do, apply yourself to it, make it work for you. But learning is huge, okay? There's a lot of things you don't know, and there's a lot of things that you need to take in and absorb into your knowledge base. But that doesn't mean because you heard Brian Shaw does X, Y, or Z that you need to go implement that in your training the next day. Show me the best 10 athletes in the world. I'll show you 20 different ways that they've trained over the years to get good. So keep it simple. Emphasize the simple principles, okay? Don't go crazy trying to apply every little thing you learn. Skepticism goes a long way. You should be concerned with the consensus, with the patterns you see that more people tend to apply that don't. And if somebody does have a unique application, ask yourself why that works for them. Is that something they have to do? Is that something that they would not have been good if they did not do? Is that something that solves a specific problem they have that other people don't? You really need a good discerning mind. You need a lot of critical thinking to be able to make these decisions. So I'll see you.